Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for today's Awards Excellence Forum. On behalf of everybody at RoSPA, I would like to also extend our gratitude to HSE Recruitment for their generous support of our Awards Excellence Forums. I'm Dr. Karen McDonnell, Occupational Health and Safety Policy Advisor at RoSPA, and I'll be chairing today's forum. Please be advised that throughout today's forum, you can ask questions to the speakers via the Q&A function. Instructions will be displayed on screen during the Q&A panel session later on if you have any issues finding this. Before today's Q&A panel session, I'm delighted to be able to virtually award some of our new awards ambassadors who are joining our network. The RoSPA Awards Ambassadors are a select group of some of the world's most successful leaders in health and safety. They are members of our awards community who have demonstrated excellence in their commitment to health and safety by strengthening the connection between RoSPA award-winning organisations and their stakeholder communities. These award ambassadors represent a tremendous force for good, potentially bringing the high standards of occupational safety and health that we increasingly take for granted to a much wider audience. The first of our new ambassadors I will be presenting today is Kevin Peart. Kevin is Group HSEQ Director at Camel Laird Ship Repairers and Shipbuilders Limited. Kevin has over 24 years operational experience in HSEQ, working within the facilities management and maritime industry. He has also earned a RoSPA Sector Award recognition 6 times and in 2019 received a RoSPA Lifetime Achievement Awards. Kevin, would you like to say a few words?
I would just like to say I was so pleased to be invited to become an ambassador, having sort of pushed forward membership of RoSPA and the awards process over the last 30 years. I'm an ex-soldier. We actually used to use RoSPA when I was in the MOD. So to be asked to be an ambassador, I'm just hoping to get a lot more involved and pass on any sort of skills, experience, best practice to help people who are, just starting that journey. Funny enough, since I've been asked to become an ambassador, we've one of our newest acquisitions, Camel Laird Ship Repairers, they've entered the RoSPA Awards process for their first ever time, which is I'm quite looking forward to working with the team. We take the approach of the whole safety team get involved in the awards submission, not just down to 1 or 2 individuals. But yeah, in very simple terms, I'm absolutely thrilled to be invited and looking forward to getting involved in the whole ambassador process.
Well, that's absolutely fabulous. Thanks so much, and thank you for accepting. We're very much looking forward to having your insight and expertise to assist organisations across the world progress in the awards. I'm great you've got a new first entry within your own network already, so thank you very much indeed, Kevin. I'd now like to introduce you to Kieran Duna. Kieran is UK Health and Safety Manager at Wills Brothers Civil Engineering Limited, whose head office is based in Motherwell in Scotland. Kieran is a chartered member of IOSH and is currently working towards his Charter Fellowship status. He has extensive knowledge of the construction industry and has specialised within the civil engineering sector in the UK and Ireland over the past 15 years. Kieran, can I invite you to say a few words, please?
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Thank you. Just firstly, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to RoSPA for having me as an ambassador. It's a huge honour. We've been big fans of RoSPA for quite a few years now through the Excellent Forum, through membership and through entering the awards every year. We enter every year. It's really quite exciting to get your application in submitted and waiting to hear the results. So thank you. It's a big honour. Yeah, and it's going to be really rewarding just to give something back. So if anyone needs any help in putting together their submissions or anything like that, we've got quite a bit of experience, and now we'd be quite delighted to help anybody. So that's what I'm hoping to get from this, is just to give something back. So thanks for having me today.
No, that's great. Thanks very much indeed. And thanks also for highlighting the mentoring opportunities that we offer through our Awards Ambassadors Network. I know that Dawn Thompson, who works in my team and coordinates these relationships between mentors and mentees, is already getting inquiries in about matching with awards ambassadors. So thanks for highlighting that, Kieran. I would now like to introduce you to Dawn Francis Jones, who is the Assistant Director of Health and Safety at Southend City College, Birmingham. Since stepping into her role, the College Health and Safety has gone to achieve ISO certifications, 9 RoSPA awards, and have won the Industry Sector Awards 6 times. Dawn is passionate, and you'll hear that. Dawn is passionate about health and safety and is heavily people-focused, striving to encourage a positive culture. Dawn, over to you for a few words. Do we have one at the moment? Yeah.
Yeah, we do have Dawn. I think she's just struggling to hear.
Okay, that's fine. We've got time. No problem.
Yeah, I've got a message from Elaine.
Do you want to move on to the next awards ambassador? And I'll just see if I can get in contact.
Move on to the next.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks very much. I can see that. So what I'd like to do now is to move on to tell you, to introduce you to Linda Green to say a few words. Linda, would you like just to step in here for us, please, and just give us a little bit of an insight into your organisation, why you're involved in the RoSPA Awards, and really what it means to be a RoSPA ambassador, please.
Apologies, Linda Green isn't able to be present right now. Is it possible to move on to Mark Parry?
It is indeed, yeah. And we'll move on now to speak with Mark Parry. Mark is currently an account director with MCOR UK, providing multidisciplinary facility management services for a highly regulated defence manufacturing organisation. This involves managing a team of over 250 direct employees in a complex and safety-focused environment. Under his leadership, his account have been awarded the RoSPA Facility Manager Sector Award for the last 5 years. Mark, please can I invite you to say a few words?
Well, I think I already asked the question, were you in close contact with anybody? Have you been double jabbed?
Hi, my sound is a little bit crackly, I'm afraid, so I wasn't sure if I was being introduced fully there or it's my turn to speak, so apologies. I'm Mark Parry, and I suppose where I come from within MCOR UK, one of our core values is safe and secure, and that's making sure safety is paramount to our employees, to our clients, to the people we touch on a daily basis, but also to society in general. Where I operate is on a highly regulated defence estate production facility. So actually, security and safety are paramount to what we do on a day-to-day basis. And for me, the key aspect as we drive forward is that culture of making sure that we're supporting our people, learning from the people, because at the end of the day, they come up with the majority of ideas, and making sure we're embedding that into our day-to-day work, from our leadership down, very much from our CEO down, and obviously to the people on the shop floor. What does it mean to be a RoSPA Health and Safety Ambassador for us? It's very much, or for myself, and sorry if I say us, because actually I operate as a team as opposed to me as an individual, is it's really just spreading our message, and also being able to reassure our workforce, both up and down the food chain, that what they do is being recognised and we're contributing to further safety worldwide as we move forward. So that's me.
Thank you very much indeed. And again, I know that the experience that you have will bring a great deal to our ambassador community. So thank you. Do we have, is Dawn available as yet, Kate?
I believe Dawn has just tried to reconnect. So I think what would be best if we move on to the next presentation, and then we can hopefully come back to both of Linda and Dawn later.
Okay, no problem at all. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone who's spoken, who's just joined our ambassador team. We're absolutely delighted to have you join. These Awards Excellence Forums are generously sponsored by HSE Recruitment Network, and I'm delighted now to introduce you to Laura Alcott, their Associate Director. Laura has been recruiting exclusively into the health and safety industry for the past 11 years across all sectors. She's a passionate advocate for the safety industry as a whole, but also for better and more transparent D&I policies within the industry and the need to attract new, fresh and exciting professionals to help make health and safety better. Laura and HSE Recruitment work closely with their partners to provide CPD opportunities for professionals at all levels, as well as the best opportunities, and was nominated as one of SHP's 25 most influential people in health and safety in 2020. Laura is going to give you an insight into the changing world of work, and I know she's going to do that with her usual style. So Laura, over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen. That was a lovely intro. You kind of stole my my opening remarks. I was going to tell everybody a little bit about me, but hopefully that's given you a good overview of who I am and what I do. And yeah, today we're going to talk about the changing world of work. Now, this is a topic I could have spoken about for days and days on end, but I'm conscious we've only got a limited amount of time. So we're going to have a whistle-stop tour through some of the key things that are going on in the industry at the moment. So if we can have the first slide, please. So this is some of the stuff that we're going to go over today. So what is the situation in health and safety currently from a recruitment perspective? You know, are there jobs? Is there stuff going on? You know, is health and safety valued? What is going on in the marketplace? And then we're going to cover some of the issues that we're probably facing at the moment. So issues with aging workforce. There are a number of impacts that happened off the back of COVID. So, you know, the position of health and safety, the salary impact, which is usually the bit most people are interested in. So we'll go through that in quite a bit of detail. And yeah, just some other bits and pieces that have kind of come off the back of COVID. And then hopefully close with some tips for you, whether you're looking to hire into your company or whether you're looking for a new job now or in the future. We'll give you a couple of pointers. So next slide, please. What's the situation in health and safety currently? So the good news is it's really good. Health and safety is in a really, really good position at the moment for a number of reasons. I came across a quote a couple of years ago from a review that Harvard Business School did, and they were looking at global professionals and what they thought the biggest sort of risks and issues were facing their companies. And this quote really, really stuck with me. So this quote said, "The most important asset at your company isn't something you can put your hands on. It isn't equipment or the physical plant. It isn't data, technology, or intellectual property. The most valuable part of your company is the people, the human capital, and any plans to move your business forward have to start there." Brilliant quote, and one I wholeheartedly agree with, particularly when it comes to the health and safety industry. You know, the idea that not having the right people in the right jobs was a major risk that came out of this Harvard Business Studies. There was only 32% of leaders in that study that took part that said they were confident that they had the right talent and people skills to get their companies achieving their strategic goals. And this was pre-COVID, that people were thinking they probably didn't have the right people and the right talent. And I can only say anecdotally that has increased, that shortage of talent and shortage of people in the right positions. You know, at the start of the pandemic, there were redundancies. You know, there were people that were coming available, but because the pandemic was safety related, what we really, really found is that most companies really started to value their health and safety people. Now, obviously they should have been doing that anyway, but this was kind of a proper eye-opener for them of the dangers of not having the right safety people in place and not having the right culture, you know, not having an engaged safety culture when they were trying to implement the basic sort of COVID restrictions, social distancing, all of that, it became very, very apparent. And what that did is that started to create opportunities in the safety industry. So we found that most companies through the pandemic started to invest in their health and safety teams. They started to either grow them or they started to develop their own people internally. And that's been really, really good for the industry as a whole. What it means is that it's a competitive market out there at the moment. You know, people have been treated fairly well in the safety industry throughout the pandemic. They've kind of been respected, and they've you know, earned some sort of cachet within the senior business leaders. And anyone that was kind of made redundant at the start of the pandemic has mostly been snapped up by now. The problem we've got is that companies are still really invested in health and safety, and they still want to grow those teams, and they're probably struggling to get those people in. So it's definitely exacerbating that talent shortage that the Harvard Business Review kind of talked about. If we can go to the next slide. There are other issues other than COVID. You know, even before COVID and the pandemic, that there was sort of issues in the safety market, and this was one of the big ones. There's an aging workforce in health and safety. We know this is an issue. You know, we aren't attracting as many new people to the industry as we're probably losing. You know, the problem we've kind of always had in health and safety is a lot of people came to it as a secondary career. Which meant, you know, they were further along in their career, they were older, they're reaching retirement age, a lot of people. And although we're doing a lot of work, you know, with Rising Stars and future leaders groups and all of this to try and bring people in, we just cannot physically bring enough people in as are leaving the industry. So we're absolutely going to have a skills gap. And the big issue with attracting people, well, there's a number of big issues with attracting people, is I think we're trying to continue to bring people to the safety industry the way we've always done it, and the new generations just are drastically different to us. You know, a lot of people within sort of Gen Z, within, you know, the millennials, or I don't even know what the youngest ones are called now. That's how far removed I am from them. But you know, all these people that are sort of coming through, there's been a lot of studies around them, what they consider important, and what their approach to work is, and it is slightly different, I think, to what we're maybe used to in the health and safety market. And we've kind of got to address those differences if we're going to close that gap in the workforce. I think a lot of people see the younger generation as maybe a group of people whose work ethic and approach is different to ours. You know, all of us that have been in the industry for a long time, you know, we got very, very used to the, you know, it's 9 to 5, but, you know, you work all the extra hours, and, you know, the company kind of comes first. And that is just not something that the younger generation are going to accept at all. You know, that does not mean they don't have work ethic. It just means that there's been a difference, I think, in how people approach work now. The balance is absolutely tipped, you know, over to work to live and not live to work, which is, you know, it's been coming for a long while, but absolutely has tipped over with the younger people. A couple of key things to consider, you know, if we're trying to bring more people into the industry, is they're very, very concerned in that generation about the ethical side of things, you know, the ethical and the morals of the company. You know, that's not just looking after staff, but that's looking after things like environmental concerns. That comes out in studies time and time again, that you know, if we want to attract people in, they are looking at your morals, they are looking at your values, and they're making sure they kind of correlate with their own. So we're finding that companies are having to focus more on things like environmental policies, and that often means bringing them even more into the health and safety domain. You know, HSE, it obviously has been encompassed, but it's definitely becoming more and more of an add-on at the moment. And I think, luckily, you know, now we have you know, ISO 45001. The standards have never been closer together. They've never been, you know, more aligned than we have at the moment. But it is extra workload for you guys, you know, if we're adding the environmental stuff in as well. Another thing that we're finding is, you know, the younger generation really expect very, very clear and precise succession planning. You know, when they join a company, they want to know exactly where they're going to go. So if they're coming in as a safety advisor, they need to know what are the steps and how are they going to get to whatever it is they want to be in the next 10 years. And the biggest feedback we're getting from people is, you know, when they are attracting younger people and they're bridging that gap they've got in their workforces, is the younger generation aren't staying because they can't see where their future lies within that company. You know, they need really, really clear structure. They need to know what the next step is, you know, where am I going to be in 10 years? And don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that you need to boot people out of jobs to make jobs for them. You know, if they're a health and safety advisor and they want to be a manager and there's someone sat in that position, that's still okay. But what you then need to do is develop them in other ways. You know, spending more time with them, supporting them on soft skills, on, you know, developing qualifications, you know, developing them as a person. And that's where things like the RoSPA, you know, mentorship and stuff like that comes in really, really handy. And it's definitely a big thing if you want to keep those people within your companies, which, you know, which hopefully that you do. And then another big issue that we're finding, not just with the aging workforce, although it is a big impact on it, is diversity and inclusion when it comes to health and safety, and whether people feel welcomed in the industry. And that can be a really, really big thing. So there's a link on this slide here for PwC. They do social mobility research and reports quite regularly. So I encourage you to go and read them because they're really, really interesting reading. The one that they completed just before the pandemic basically found there were really big differences between the generations on how they looked at careers, how they perceived their ability to be able to get on in industry. And most people in the older age group, so it was the over 55s, I think they looked at, basically said that the biggest barrier to them in their career was probably qualification and skill set. You know, it was learning new skills and making sure they had the right areas of expertise. But the picture for the 18 to 30-year-olds was drastically different. They found that 24% of people in that age bracket thought that their ethnicity would be a barrier when it came to progressing in their career. And it wasn't just that. There was 24% that thought their sexuality would be a barrier. There was 30-something% thought it would be where they were from. 12% thought it might be their disability that would stop them from sort of progressing. So you can see how that ties into the ethics. Now, luckily, obviously in health and safety, we are very ethical, which is a really, really big draw for these guys. But it's got to be about the company still. You know, it has to be that they believe this company is not just, you know, not just sort of giving lip service to these ideas, that they genuinely are embedded in the culture. You know, they really, really do want to be a diverse and an inclusive workforce. They want to be an ethical workforce. So the big thing there is we don't want to just focus on diverse hiring. We need to focus on the inclusive cultures within our companies. So things like I always use Kia as a really, really good example. Kia every year have entered the Pride Parade, and they put a float on and they have loads of their employees. And I think the first time they did it, they did get quite a lot of stick from the industry saying, well, you're a construction company, what are you doing in a Pride Parade? But what that does is it really shows this new generation that Kia are a company that cares about LGBTQA, and they care about, you know, ethics. They have genuine morals, and that then makes them a company that people want to work for. So this is a really big thing we have to focus on in health and safety industry at the moment. It's focusing on D&I, it's focusing on, you know, succession planning for people. It's focusing on giving them the tools that they need in that generation to want to join health and safety and see health and safety as a career where, you know, they can actually make a difference and they can actually get somewhere. So aging workforce, a big thing to think about at the moment. Can we have the next slide, please? going back to the impact of COVID, unfortunately, I'm going to talk about this a lot during this because we cannot avoid the fact that this happened. The pandemic happened, and it had an impact on every industry, but particularly on health and safety. Some of the major things that I've noticed in the last 12 months are, as I mentioned at the start, value. The value of a health and safety professional has never been higher. You know, it's always been, you know, an industry where we should be valued, and you know, we should be able to see why this is important to the company. But the pandemic opened people's eyes. It opened new lines of communication, and it has really given health and safety a new kind of pedestal, I guess, in a lot of companies. And that can only be a good thing. What we need to make sure we do with that, though, is not lose that. It's very easy once we've got this, you know, we've got this position to kind of take it for granted and go, yeah, okay, they get me now. They get health and safety. They get why I'm important, and you know, don't keep the lines of communication open, and then you know we kind of slip backwards. So that's a major thing we've got to focus on now is running with this value. I've got there, better the devil you know. It's really made people quite reticent to move. It's very difficult to move people at the moment or to hire people. As we said, you know, probably because of the value thing. You know, people were really well respected during COVID. A lot of them were compensated appropriately, and you know, I think after a very turbulent, gosh, what is it, 18 months, nearly 2 years, people don't want to rock the boat anymore. You know, they're comfortable. So that's really created kind of sticking points for people. So yeah, very tough to get people to move, to get people to consider new roles at the minute. And then the other thing is the well-being aspect. We're seeing this more and more now is, you know, as I mentioned, environmental is already kind of getting lumped on. Well-being is definitely huge now, even more so than it was before the pandemic. Most roles we're looking at now, they want people to have an understanding of mental health and well-being. And that's quite different to what was happening, you know, 18 months to 2 years ago. Again, really, it's a great thing. It means that companies have seen what happened during the pandemic. They appreciated that it was a strain. It was a very difficult time for people, and they're putting commitment into well-being. But unfortunately, it does mean it's probably another thing they're gonna add on to health and safety. So definitely an area we all need to make sure we're kind of upskilling on. Could we go to the next slide, please? So this is the one everyone's usually interested in, the impact on salary. What's going on with salaries in health and safety at the moment? So we recently did a salary survey. If anybody would like a copy of the full survey afterwards, please do get in touch and I can send it across to you. You can use it for your own personal reading. You can use it to try and get a pay rise, whatever you like. But yeah, just drop me a line. So for this salary survey, we spoke to over 500 professionals in the industry, and we compared it to previous salary surveys that we've done. And what we found is definitely salaries are on the rise. Good news for you all. It does, however, prove to be problematic at the moment because a lot of companies are still stuck in the salaries of 2 years ago. So what we're really finding at the moment is, you know, we're getting people come to us, for example, with a health and safety advisor role. They want someone with a couple of years experience, 30K. 2 years ago, absolutely no problem. That would have been fine. Now to try and attract people, because like I said, people don't really want to move. They're quite comfortable. You've kind of got to sweeten the deal. You've got to account for the fact that lots of people got pay rises, you know, because of the work they did through the pandemic. If you're looking for an advisor with a couple of years experience, you know, you're not going to get them at 30K anymore. And that's kind of happened at every level. So you can have a look here at the health and safety manager one, broken down by location, because obviously we know location makes a big difference. You know, the brackets are always going to be quite large because some companies overpay, some companies underpay. But if you look at London, a health and safety manager, the lowest that someone came to us with was 23 grand, which is drastically underpaying in my opinion. And and in most people's opinion, I think. And then the highest that someone came back with was up circa 80,000. So really, really big difference there. But the average was coming out around 50k. Again, that's gone up. About 2 years ago, you know, a health and safety manager looking after a single site, you'd be looking at 40, 45. And now the average is coming in around 50. So that's definitely had an impact. Again, you can see the different locations. Obviously, there is a slight difference in the salaries, but I would say most of these are an increase on what we've been seeing previously, particularly when you look at the top ends. But the averages are definitely an increase. By the way, it is broken down by gender as well in this salary survey, if you want to have a look at that. So that was the health and safety managers. Oh, can I see the next slide, please? So health and safety officer advisor level, this is probably where we've seen the biggest difference. Yeah, the average pretty consistently across any location is coming out in around 30 to 35k now. So that's the average. So I think that's where companies are getting confused. You know, they're thinking, well, we're offering 30k. That's about right. And again, like I said, 2 years ago, you would have been okay. But at the moment, the average probably isn't good enough if you want to get the best people. Because like I said, they're very comfortable. If they're very good, they've been looked after, they don't want to move. So just offering the average is just kind of not going to move them at the moment. The other thing we've noticed is this is health and safety officer advisor kind of level, but this included roles where people had no experience when they joined. People went in straight from qualification, and even those people, most were still getting around the 30k mark with no experience. That's a huge difference. You know, again, 2 years ago, you'd be talking, 22 to 25 for someone with no experience, you know, just recently graduated. But now, if you're paying 30, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the no experience. If you want a couple of years, you've got to go up to 35. Can we see the next slide, please? And then head of, again, you know, quite a big range dependent on location, but in London up to 120 for head of. Other locations, the average is usually around 65, 70, depending on where you are. That's probably the one that stayed closer to what it was a few years ago, but definitely still, again, this is the average. And most companies don't want an average professional. You know, they are really, really looking for the best. So this is kind of the issue we're having with salaries. You know, offering an average salary out at the moment is just not enough to move people. So yeah, again, drop me a line if you want the salary survey. It's got loads more detail on this, and yeah, you can use it to try and get yourself some more money, or to try and get some more money for the guys that work for you, or whatever it is that you need it for. Can we have the next slide, please? Big change in the world of work is the home working, flexible working. Huge change. This has been revolutionary and really quite exciting to see. So the big thing that we've found with this is, you know, most of our clients 2 years ago, if someone had said, you know, I absolutely would love to be put forward for that role, but I need some flexible working because I've got to drop kids off, or I'm a carer, or I need to work from home a couple of days, most clients, it was a no-go. You know, it was very much that old school mentality of somebody needs to be in the office 9 to 5. I need to be able to see them. You know, I need to be able to monitor what they're doing. And the pandemic just completely destroyed that mentality and really opened up the home working and the flexible working approach. Obviously, that's not necessarily the case if you're in, say, manufacturing or construction where you need to be on site, but outside of those, this has had an incredible impact. Over the last 18 months, most clients had people working from home, and they realized that it worked. It was absolutely fine. People have got used to it. It has had a huge impact on people's mental health, you know, not having the long commute, being able to spend more time with the family. You know, even things like you've got your lunch break, you can go run little errands, or you can tidy up the house, and it just has had a huge impact from a mental health perspective. And what we're finding now is companies that don't offer home working, flexible working, you're going to really struggle, really struggle. People are looking for that adaptiveness. The good thing with this is is really helping to readdress the balance when it comes to diversity and inclusion, which is great. So since, you know, the pandemic, say, over the last 12 months, we have noticed a distinct improvement in the numbers of women that we're placing, in the numbers of people from lower income areas. And our data, it seems to be suggesting this is due to the home working and the flexible working, because it's leveling the playing field for people. So you've got things like, for example, if you're working in London, those from sort of the lower income areas surrounding maybe had quite big commutes. It put them off a lot of the roles. Now that they can work from home, they've got the opportunity to put their hat in the ring for these. So that's really increasing things. And then, yeah, working mums, the fact that now, yeah, they can work from home, we can get them doing the school run, they can adjust their hours as needed. This has had a huge impact. I mean, the last 3 roles that I've placed have been working mothers, and all of them have asked, you know, can we have some level of flexible working? And the clients straight away have said, yeah, no problem. We are used to that. We know how to work that now because of the pandemic. Whereas I guarantee 2 years ago, that would have been a no. And we would have had to discount that person from the process. So this is huge. This is really, really changing the way that we're doing things. However, of course, it is going to put more pressure on health and safety team. So as you know, we're adding environmental, we're adding well-being. This is a big thing from a well-being perspective. You know, it's putting a lot of pressure on the health and safety guys. From a well-being perspective, you know, how do you get out and see people that are working from home? How are we checking on their mental well-being? You know, lone working, all of that sort of stuff that we maybe didn't need to consider previously. You know, even from a personal perspective, you know, at HC Recruitment and Executive Network Group, our parent company, we did the same. Everyone worked from home throughout the pandemic straight away. We have never, ever, ever allowed anyone to do that before, because the mentality was it doesn't work. If you're in recruitment, you've got to be together. You've got to be in the office, and it worked brilliantly. Everybody's happiness has gone off the scale. Our well-being is definitely better, but we found it a challenge from, you know, a safety perspective, just even with you know, doing DSC assessments and getting out and checking people's home working space. Like, you know, we're looking at togetherness is one of our values within the company, and we spend a lot of time making sure that people feel part of the culture, and, you know, we really have this great family mentality. How on earth do you sustain that when everybody's working from home and nobody sees each other? So it's definitely adding more stuff for you guys to do. Hopefully you can see now why you all deserve more money, why the salaries are going up, because there is definitely lots more for you guys to do. But yeah, the big thing with the home working, the flexible working, is we're finding companies that don't offer this now are really, really struggling. Most people expect this after the pandemic, so definitely something to kind of consider. If we go to the next slide. And then this is a big one as well. So the other thing that we're really seeing is just the shortage of roles in general is having an impact on health and safety. You know, a really good example here is HGV drivers, right? So we've got a real shortage of HGV drivers, and what's happening is that the lack of drivers is enforcing longer hours, possibly more, you know, less safe working conditions, a lot more pressure on people. That's definitely having an impact on, you know, companies and their safety teams. That's just a new thing that we've really got to consider. And it goes for pretty much every role out there. You know, there's a shortage of most people at the moment in the recruitment market. Look at, you know, the hospitality industry. That's a big one. There's a huge shortage of, you know, your wait staff and your front of house and all of this. That is putting a huge pressure on the people that are there. And we all know that, you know, human beings, we're not infallible. When pressure is put on us, that's when people start to cut corners. So that is a really big impact at the moment, and something that a lot of our clients are really focused on. So this, I think, is going to be the big focus for the next 6 months at least. This is going to be the big thing that a lot of our clients are going to want people to look at. Next slide. So this was a whistle-stop tour. I am willing to talk to you about this in any detail if anyone wants to ask me further questions, or, you know, ask in the Q&A afterwards. But as I said, could have talked about it for days. I wanted to give you just a couple of things that you can do, because I always like to give you action points if I can after you know, something like this where I've thrown all this information at you. So if you're a hirer, if you want to bring someone into your safety team, one of the big things you've got to do, is appreciate the changing market and adjust your expectations accordingly. If you know, 2 years ago were getting someone for 30k, and you're wondering why you can't now, you just can't, unfortunately. You're going to have to adjust your expectations. If you're thinking, well, I'll bring someone in who's a grad and I'll train them, you need to adjust your expectations. You know, you're not going to get them for the price that you used to get them. You need to be much more flexible in your approach. You need to make sure that you're considering people from different backgrounds. You're considering people that need flexible working and adaptive working, and you know, you need to make sure that you're looking at different options. But to me, that's a great thing, because this is going to really, really have an impact on the diversity and the way that we think about health and safety. So to me, this is only a good thing as long as we all embrace it. Make sure you're paying accordingly. You can't undervalue your staff. A huge thing we're finding at the moment, and I do get it, is say we're hiring for a company. This happened just last week. They want to bring someone on at 40k, and it's a multi-site role. We tell them it's not enough. They want us to go look anyway. We do. We find them someone that they like. They offer them 40k and they turn it down. You know, pretty much what we expected to happen. Their logic for the reason they cannot pay more is they have other people in the company that have the same qualifications that are already on 40k. So if they pay this person more, they've got to pay everyone more. I get it, I do, but you probably just need to pay everyone more. that is kind of the message, because if you don't, other people will. Other people are going to come in, they're going to sneak them out from under you. So it's really, really important that you're paying people accordingly, not just your new hires, but the people in your team. You know, don't undervalue what you've got. Focus on soft skills rather than the qualifications. I mean, we've been pushing this for quite a long time in health and safety. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean we're never going to need qualifications. Absolutely, there's a bare minimum that you've got to have from a qualification perspective. But again, this is, for example, we were recruiting a safety manager for a single site, and they were adamant this person had to be diploma. And we were putting really, really great people in front of them at certificate level who absolutely had the soft skills and the leadership ability to do that role. And clients are kind of saying, well, no, we always have diploma when they're manager. You've got to be more flexible than that now. We've got to look at developing people and bringing people through, particularly because of that aging workforce. You know, we're going to have this big skills gap. There is just a middle group of people that are missing. So that means, we have to kind of bring people up and develop them ourselves. So try and focus a bit more on the soft skills and what that person can do rather than what qualification they've earned. Forget comparisons. What I mean by this is, in the recruitment world, this happens all the time. They will get us to go out to market. It's quite a tough search. We'll get them 2 or 3 people that look really, really good. And we'll get them down to a final stage, and then the director will say, well, I've only met one person. I need comparisons. I need to meet more people. You cannot do that in this market. We've had to tell our clients, look, by the time that they meet the director, they've been through 3 or 4 interview processes. They have the ability to do the job, or they wouldn't have got in front of the director. The director does not have to meet 3 or 4, because in reality, there aren't 3 or 4 out there for him to meet. By the time we put it to that one is the person that can do the job. So companies have got to forget, needing comparisons. They've got to trust that, that they've identified the right person. You've got to keep your processes timely. What's killing stuff at the moment is processes dragging on, people going on holiday, and then there's 3 weeks between first interview and second interview. Health and safety people are in demand at the moment. You cannot do that, because they will get another offer. And take advice. If you're working with someone like myself and I'm telling you you're not paying enough, I promise you I'm not doing it just to try and increase a fee for me. I promise you. I'm telling you because I cannot place something if it's not placeable. And surely would rather I tell you that up front. So please do take advice. If the market is telling you something, if your recruiter is telling you something, if your HR team is telling you something, it doesn't exist, you need to be more flexible. Please do listen. So that's to the hirer. The candidates, if you are looking for a role at the moment, some things that are really, really important for you is to know your value. This is where things like the salary survey will come in handy. You know, do stick to your guns at the moment. You are in demand, you are worth money. Admittedly, you will make my life much more difficult, but but it's absolutely what you deserve. So please do know your value. Don't undersell yourself, because it's not good for you in the long run. Please do, you know, go in there with what you need and tell them what you need. And if it's not enough, walk away. Know what you want. So this, for me, know what you want, is very much focused around you and your career progression. You know, we talked about this with the younger generation coming through, but I think this is important, whoever you are, that you really know where you want to go, what steps you want to take, and how you're going to get there, and make sure you're communicating that with your company, so they know exactly where you want to go and how you want to get there and what they can do to help you, because companies are really keen to help you at the moment. You know, they do want to develop you, they want to keep you, so tell them what you need. Please tell them what you need. Demonstrate your value through awards. So obviously, if you guys are here, you know, you've either won a RoSPA award or you're considering entering at the moment. This is huge at the moment, because there is no better way to demonstrate your value than to win an award for what you do. And if you want, you know, if you want to make sure that your company are giving you the respect and the salary and everything that you are due, then this is a great way to evidence it for them. Whether that's in your current company, whether that's in new companies. But I can tell you that, yeah, if I'm putting someone in front of a client and they've been instrumental in helping their previous company win an award, that's a huge tip for most companies at the moment. So a great way to really demonstrate your value. Speak to your employer if you're unhappy. Again, I'm making my life more difficult by telling you this, but it just makes sense. And I tell everybody when I speak to them, you know, if I'm speaking to a candidate and say, I want to move because I'm being underpaid, I completely get that. And yeah, I can get you a different job that's paying more money. But if that's the only reason you want to move and you're quite happy, go and speak to your employer and see if there's a pay rise there at first, because often there is, and they just don't realize that the market's changed, that things are different now. And if you go and speak to them and they say that categorically, you know, there is no uplift there, then at least you've got your definitive answer. And then you can look at other things. It doesn't put you in a weak position. I think people worry that it's going to make their employers think that you're looking around. It's just you knowing your value and saying, look, you know, I think that I deserve more. These are the reasons why. Is there any potential? That's not you screaming to them, I'm going to go look for another job if you don't pay me. It's just asking for what you're worth. So please do speak to your employer first if you're unhappy. Keep your personal brand strong. You know, focus on your soft skills. If you've heard me talk before, you know, I'm obsessed with personal brand. This is so important again at the moment, because everything at the moment is about demonstrating value and demonstrating why you're good, and personal brand is the best way to do it. Like I said, we've created all this value in the health and safety world, and all we need to do is make sure we don't lose that. We cannot go backwards now. We need to build on that and build on that. And by people in the safety industry having a strong personal brand and talking about all the great stuff we do and all the value that we give, we can only grow and add to that. So yeah, keep your personal brand strong. If you are looking for a new role, make sure you investigate the client culture and the working conditions. I'm telling everybody at the moment to ask them what happened during the pandemic. How did they treat their staff? You know, what were the working conditions like? Did they let people work from home? Did they, you know, put people down to reduced hours? Just ask them, and you'll get a really good idea of then if their morals and their values say, you know, togetherness and we're a family company, but then what they did during the pandemic doesn't necessarily reflect that. It gives you a pretty good indication of whether they are what they say they are. And finally, engage in the community. Very connected to the personal brand thing. You know, we've got a great community here in health and safety, and we have all learned some big lessons over the last 18 months, 2 years, whatever it was. So we need to talk about this. We need to share this information. It's only going to get probably, you know, more and more on our shoulders as we go on for a little bit of time. You know, hopefully that will then mean that environmental roles will come up more, well-being roles will come up more, but at the moment, you know, they are going to put a lot more on you. So engaging in your community and sharing knowledge is the best way to make sure that you know, you're doing the job to the best of your ability. And then final slide, and there's my contact details. I am on LinkedIn 24 hours a day. So please do reach out to me if you have any questions. If you want the salary survey, drop me a line and I'm happy to send that across to you. Or if you want to, ask me anything that we don't have time to cover today, or you want to ask in confidence, then please do reach out to me. And thank you very much.
No, thanks very much indeed, Laura. Delivered with great style as usual. So thanks indeed. A very people-centered approach for our audience today, which I think just reflects the nature of our business, is the sort of focus on people. And I think what I really valued there was the emphasis on the insights into the value that the RoSPA Awards adds on a personal as well as an organisational basis. So hopefully we can pick that up in the panel debate. What I'd like to do now is, because I can see that we have Linda Green with us, is just to mention Linda at the appropriate point now and introduce you to her. Linda Green is the Head of Health and Safety and Wellbeing at Adventure Forest Limited, an organisation that most people recognise as a treetop activity provider, Go Ape. Before taking on the role 7 years ago, Linda has worked as a health and safety enforcement officer for more than 15 years. Having investigated workplace fatalities, she absolutely understands just how important health and safety processes are in the workplace and what is needed to ensure that tragedies are avoided. It was Linda's expertise that led her to being asked to join Go Ape, and it's Linda's expertise we're bringing into the RoSPA Awards Ambassadors Network today. Linda, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you to everybody. Laura, that was a fantastic presentation. Brilliant. Spot on. Yes, I absolutely love and adore health and safety. And I started my career in health and safety when I worked in private industry first. And somebody was looking for somebody that they could say, yeah, that person does health and safety. So they came to the one person that would put their head above the parapet. Basically, I was a gobby cow, and they went, will you do it? And I said, yes, I'll do it, but I'm only going to do it if you send me on some training. And I started off with a very, very basic CIEH one-day course, and I just loved it. And then I then went through the whole progression of I did an IOSH course. I then went and did a NEBOSH certificate, a NEBOSH diploma, an enforcement diploma, a master's. I just love health and safety. And people say you have to be sad to love health and safety, but I don't think you do. I think you just need to know that you're engaging in a subject to look after your colleagues and to look after other people. And that's what I love about it. I loved enforcement. I really, really did love the enforcement world. The fatalities that I investigated and the companies, somebody went to work one day and didn't go home. And I also connected with those families of the deceased, as well as the businesses that potentially caused the death of that person. And I got so much satisfaction in seeing those businesses achieve. So yes, they failed. Yes, they were prosecuted, but they have to turn around to be successful and to pick up with the staff and to be a good company. And I saw those successes and I enjoyed it. And I left the enforcement world and came back into what I always call a real world of health and safety. When things were going that HSE and local authority, unfortunately, the onus was put on a business. It's your responsibility. You need to do it. So that the help was removed from enforcement, giving some guidance, and I left at the right time. Go Ape actually headhunted me, and I came back into the real world. But I am still very much in touch with my former colleagues, and I actually help them with some investigations, giving them some advice and whatever. And so I love that bit of a mix. And I also do mentoring as well. And I think it's right that we mentor people that are coming into our profession, and that we are actually very kind to people, because I think because of COVID, and I won't tell you what I call COVID, but and it isn't rude, you know, but because of COVID, we've forgotten how to be kind. We've forgotten how to be kind with ourselves and with other people. And I challenge myself every day when I want to actually scream at somebody, I just go, no, 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 be kind, and try and understand. So I want to thank RoSPA for giving me, allowing me to be an ambassador of the Health and Safety Awards. Thank you so much. I always promote RoSPA, whether it's in my private life or whether it's in my work life, I promote RoSPA. I think what RoSPA deliver for society as a whole is absolutely excellent. You know, it starts off from in a family, from being a baby, all the way up through to your working career. I just think the whole organisation and the ethos of RoSPA is absolutely fantastic. And I actually promote it to the 2 charities I work for, one that's industry based, but one that's actually community based as well. So thank you. I hope I didn't bore any of you to death, but that's me.
Well, certainly not. And I think that you've just shown everybody why you've been invited to become a RoSPA Awards ambassador, and as have the others that we've brought into the network today. So thanks so much. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to today's panel session, which Laura's going to join along with Rebecca and Chris. You will have been sent the presentations prior to this webinar. If you haven't had it yet, a chance to view them, I strongly advise you to give these a watch after the forum, as there's some really interesting and useful information in them. You will also have seen a video by Tiago Ramos from L'Oréal Administrative Sites Brazil. L'Oréal Administrative Sites Brazil were this year's awarded the Sir George Errol Trophy, the highest award in RoSPA's award scheme. Unfortunately, Tiago is unable to join the event today. So let me introduce Rebecca. Rebecca is an IOSH Chartered Safety and Health Practitioner with over 16 years experience in the utilities and energy sector. Rebecca is currently head of SHEQ for Green Frog Connect, who design and build power generation projects and high voltage electrical infrastructure. I would also like to introduce Chris Pike, Head of Safety and Assurance at Till Hill. Chris's contribution to health and safety in the forestry industry was recognised in 2010 when he was presented with the Licence Trophy by Confor. Under Chris's guidance, Till Hill Forestry won the Sir George Errol Trophy at the 2015 annual awards. So welcome, Chris. Please remember you can ask your question to our panel via the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So just to start things off, panel, I've got a couple of questions that have already come in from our audience. And if I could perhaps ask Rebecca, is it easier to deliver OSH performance improvement when you are an SME?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think it can be easier. In some ways, you have a better ability to instigate change because you have access to the leaders and the board within the company, as well as those on the construction side, shop floor. You could quite easily go around all of the workforce and discuss issues with them directly. However, on the flip side, your budget is very limited. You don't have the team of occupational health officers or advisors around you to sort of discuss ideas. So it can be slightly isolating, but I think the key point with SMEs is that we really rely on our clients and higher up the supply chain to help us. You know, what might seem as something quite insignificant to them, you know, issuing safety alerts, things like that, that can be really valuable for us because it's such a time saver and we can, you know, add on to their systems that they've already got in place.
Well, thanks very much for that, because quite often, you know, we have that conversation about the scalability of interventions across, whether you're an SME or a multi national organisations. So I think that's really a very useful insight. What one piece of advice would you give to a new entrant?
So I would definitely ask for a mentor. We entered the awards the first year we entered. We didn't have a mentor, and we had a silver award, which was great. But when I requested a mentor for the next time that we entered, it was really obvious that I'd totally missed the point with some of the basics about actually how to answer the questions. So it wasn't perhaps that we weren't doing things, it was just that I hadn't realised what information I needed to make obvious to the judges. So that was a really, really valuable experience, and I would definitely, if I had my time again, I would definitely have done that the first time around. So yeah, definitely request a mentor.
Yeah, I think that's really useful again that you've highlighted the mentoring aspect of that's associated with added value the awards bring. So again, I would encourage anyone that's listening in at the moment to contact us if they would like some guidance from one of our mentors to help them move forward. And just the last question for you, Rebecca. In our mind, you know, writing an award submission is a huge piece of reflective practice. Do you use this process as part of any of the CPD requirements that you fulfil on behalf of your professional role?
Yes, it's really useful actually for the IOSH CPD that you have to do for your chartership. It really gives you a very wide-ranging overview of everything that you've done for that previous year. And also when you enter the awards sort of year on year, you've got this benchmarking that you can properly use on your previous performance. Again, in a small business, that can be quite challenging because it's quite difficult to find similar businesses to benchmark against. So yeah, it's going back to the CPD aspect of it. I do find that once I've sort of written the submission for that year, there'll be some things where I think, oh, that's great, we've improved, but there'll be other areas where I'll think, right, I really perhaps need to spend some more time learning about how to improve this aspect of the business, and then, you know, obviously I can record that on my CPD and look to develop over the coming 12 months.
And I've got one final question for you, Rebecca. I thought I'd do everyone's questions in chunks, and I hope that's okay. As an SME, you also have a supply chain. How do you drive performance through your supply chain? We sort of refer to it at the moment as value chain, because if it's not right, it's not adding value. So how do you help your supply chain improve their performance?
So we do try to use the same subcontractors and suppliers where we can. It's not always so simple because our work tends to be it can come in peaks and troughs. So, but where we can, we carry out things like engagement sessions so we'll have health and safety consultation, but rather than just limit it to employees or direct contractors, then we would actually open that up to our whole supply chain, invite everybody along. And it's a kind of the first thing we always say is that this is a no blame, you know, it's not commercially, it's nothing to do with commercials, it's just let's have this open discussion about what we're doing on site, how we can make it better, what challenges have we got coming up. And I think our subcontractors, you know, like we appreciate that from higher up our supply chain. I think they also appreciate us facilitating that kind of discussion, which they perhaps wouldn't otherwise be having.
Yeah, I think that when we speak to Laura later, I think that Laura would reiterate the importance of looking after your supply chain as part of your community. That really does help your organisation move forward. So thanks very much indeed for those insights, Rebecca. Can I move on just to ask a few questions of Chris? In your sort of video presentation, you mentioned being mentored within your early career at Till Hill. How did this really benefit you and the organisation?
Thanks, Karen. Well, actually, it was my early days in the safety profession. Unlike the usual route Laura identified of being on the tools and getting the experience hard won and then moving into safety later in your career, I did a degree in safety and health at uni. My first post was within a paper mill. When I went there, there was a consultant who was around 70 at the time and looking to retire. So the plan was obvious that he would hand over to me and I would go. And I recognised the value John could give me. So I sort of thought, right, I've done 4 years at uni, but I'm going to learn more from John in these next couple of years. And John introduced me to what was then the Kent Industrial Safety Group, which is one of the Safety Groups UK, as it's now known, network. And there I met Eddie Adrian, one of our founder members at the group. Both have been in the paper industry for many years, and so I learned all I could from them. So in terms of mentoring and the impact with RoSPA, I think learning as much as I could from them, and I still use some of the lessons that they taught me then. Although at the tender age of 23 or whatever it was at the time, I didn't really understand what they were talking about. But those things have come back now and think, oh yeah, it now makes sense. But the introduction to the Safety Groups UK network has been really useful for building up a network locally, getting involved in RoSPA through that side of things. So I would encourage everybody to seek out their local safety group. We've got IOSH who have their branches and they provide a service, and that's very good. And I'm an IOSH member myself, but do seek out your local safety group. Through that, there's the Alan Butler Awards. So we're now the Kent Health and Safety Group. We swapped industrial for health a few years ago, and we enter the Alan Butler Awards. So a very similar format to the RoSPA Awards. So you can take part of that as your team within your safety group, and that will help with your experience in putting together, as Rebecca said. It's not what you've done, it's how you answer the question and demonstrate what you've done when you're answering your questions.
Yeah. I think thanks indeed for highlighting Safety Groups UK. RoSPA provide the Secretariat for Safety Groups, so we can certainly help connect people around the sort of various groups. I think there's about 70 groups in the UK, and I think, Chris, you've just identified, it's those connections between people, organisations and networks that really do help sustain us in what have been quite difficult times over the last 18 months or so. Within your industrial sector, the protection of lone and vulnerable workers is at the heart of the sector and your business. How do you engage with your lone and vulnerable workers?
Yeah, it's very difficult for us, Karen. As you can see in the background of music behind me, you might go to a site like that. You might travel. If for me, it can be several hundred miles. For our local managers, it can still be 50 or 60 miles. And you get to site and there's 2 or 3 people working, and then to get to another site, it's another 50 or 60 miles. So it is a challenge for us. So we use a variety of techniques. So the first one is our managers visiting and doing the regular site monitoring, and they can take out any alerts that we've put out to site. We publish a monthly safety and insurance bulletin that we share through all our contractors, and we share that wider through the industry as well, and can be usually will be found on the FISA, the Forest Industry Safety Accord website. My details are on the back page of that, so any of our contractors, any of our workers can pick the phone up or email me directly. And I actually had a call on Monday after putting out this month's newsletter from a contractor wanting to raise some concerns generally around the tackling of ash trees at the moment, and with ash dieback, it's becoming quite a problem around felling those. So he wanted to feedback like that. So we got that sort of as the main forum. We've also have a contractor portal, so our contractors can register for the portal, and on there we have all our toolbox talks and guidance that they can then access themselves. So we can give them QR codes on paperwork and drive them through the portal. We have a number of other ways of doing it. If we've got a particular problem, we might have some stand down sessions where we're drawing a particular group. We've done it for chainsaw operators in the past. We've done it with hauliers in the past. And we also host what we call Insist on Safety Days, which sort of take the HSE SHAD format and just build on that for our own workforce. And then one of the key tools that we use, we've been doing this since about 2009, is our peer group review. So where we have an incident that we understand the mechanics of the incident, but somebody did something surprising in that incident, and we want to understand why they did that surprising thing. So we gather people together that do the same job, and then they can actually give us the operator's insight as to why that surprising thing wasn't quite so surprising after all. And actually we have altered our risk assessments, our guidance and things as a result of those peer group reviews. So that's a really powerful tool for us to understand what's going on these very remote sites, and how what we're putting out there affects the operator on the ground.
I think that's sort of the last element of your response there, you know, that surprising thing will resonate with everyone who's listening in this afternoon. The Till Hill story demonstrates the challenges faced by OSH professionals in keeping organisations on track. What tools and techniques have you used that others could adopt? And I'm reflecting back on the content of the video presentation and the sort of the sequence of events following the fatality that you had a number of years ago.
Yeah, it's a well-worn path really of leadership and engagement. You've got to not just get your leaders to commit to a safety program, they've got to be part of it, because you've got to build the trust at all levels. So the middle manager at 9 o'clock at night has got to have the trust that when he makes a decision, that he will be backed up by his boss at 9 o'clock the next morning as to why something may not have got done. So you've got to have them as part of it, not just a figurehead, and build that trust through. You know, there's a massive difference between saying that needs to be done safely, but it needs to be done by tonight, and saying it needs to be done by tonight, but it needs to be done safely. And I had this sort of exact scenario with our MD back many years ago, who stood up after my presentation. You know, it was the senior management conference, and health and safety first. Chris, on you come, and I did my presentation, and he stood up and said, "Guys, you know, we've got to be safe, but we've got to be commercial." And you know, I sort of winced at that and challenged him over it later on. And well, let's say we had a two-stage argument, a two-stage discussion around what he'd said. The first was quite heated, and the second was a couple of weeks later, where we understood where each other was coming from, and actually gave Steve the language that he, you know, to use to be able to express what he really felt about safety, which was genuine. And we launched our Insist on Safety campaign, and Steve stood up, who was the MD at the time, and he opened that. And he, in his opening, he recounted a fatality of a colleague many years previous, and he actually became quite emotional as he was recounting this in front of our entire senior management team, and that was so powerful, that raw emotion that he expressed. He did say to me afterwards, he said, "Oh, Chris," he said, "I hadn't planned on my voice breaking through that, but it just took me." So that trust in your leadership, it's not just a figurehead, it's really being part of it. And then you've got to get the engagement, and you know, none of this is new. We had the regs from 1977 about safety committees, so we just got to get that engagement, and we got to get people who are doing the job, their involvement, so the rules become workable, the rules become their rules, and you get that buy-in. And then the final thing I would just say to people is stop counting how often it goes wrong, but start counting how much effort you put into preventing it going wrong. So what are we doing how much time we're spending making it go right, rather than just counting how many times things have gone wrong.
And what benefits do you think there are to high hazard organisations, or to entering the RoSPA Awards? You know, what does that, or what can that bring to your sector?
One of the beauties I like of the RoSPA Awards is entering the sector award and getting the feedback. So you're actually getting the feedback on your entry and where you could improve. And if your entry is reflected what you've done, it's also then some advice on what you need to do to improve your overall performance. And also one of the beauties is it strips away this excuse of high hazard. Our workers have got just as much right to go home to their families as workers in any other sector. And just because we're high hazard, we shouldn't have that as an excuse as having a worse performance. We just need to put more effort in to make sure that we're sending our people home. And the RoSPA Award, where you're being compared and benchmarked across, really sort of strips all that excuse making out about, oh, it's dangerous, or it's difficult, and well, what are you doing about it? And that's key for me. So it's the benchmarking, Karen, and the I find the feedback on the sector award really helpful.
Well, thanks very much for that, Chris. I mean, the bottom line is that people do deserve to be protected. So I think that response certainly resonated with everyone who's listening in at the moment. And if I'd like to move on and just ask yourself a couple of questions, Laura, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fab. Your presentation gave us a lot to reflect on. And I'm just wondering about how you would encourage people to use this added value of putting a RoSPA award submission together for a CV, or indeed as a personal narrative for progression within an organisation, or even an interview for a new role. You did allude to those elements within your presentation. I just thought it might be useful to tease those out, so we have a conversation about it, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Loads and loads of different ways that you can use it to your advantage. So I'll start with the one that you may have heard me talk about before, which is the personal branding aspect. I think it's hugely important, if we want to progress the health and safety industry, that we share more and we get more information out there, and that really helps change perception. We made a considered effort about 6 years ago within HC recruitment to say, okay, we're only putting positive news out there, because everything in health and safety is so miserable. It's always a fine or an infraction or whatever it is. So and sometimes you have to create your own good news, but there's loads of stuff you can create, and the RoSPA Awards is a great example of that. That is really demonstrating the worth of your team, what the great things that your company's been doing. So I encourage people to use that from a personal branding perspective. So talk about it on social media, really engage with other people, write blogs about it. I've used the example of David Foy before, who did a really good blog, a blog sort of journey where it was before I enter, while I'm entering, and then we won the award. Stuff like that is great. That really shares your experience, which not only makes the industry better, but it makes you look brilliant, because you're the kind of person that wins awards. So I mean, that's always a great thing. Internally, I mean, obviously, I would assume that your companies get the value of what you're doing. They understand why you're entering the RoSPA Awards and the value of winning those. But do they communicate it effectively? I think is sometimes where you can have a real impact. So that's getting involved with your internal comms channels, your internal marketing departments, and making sure that everybody within the company knows what you guys are doing. If you are a company that says we put safety first, the RoSPA Awards is a great example of, and look, we've been validated. Yeah, absolutely, we put it first. We're doing brilliant stuff. But oftentimes it's just the safety team that knows, or it's not communicated fully within the team. So I would definitely get involved with the comms teams, with the marketing teams, and make sure you're pushing it out internally on social media. Talk about it everywhere. And if you're a candidate, absolutely it needs to be on the CV. It needs to be something that I notice or an employer notices, because it's a great indicator of why you're better than someone else, or why they should hire you, or why they should speak to you. I've said this before, health and safety CVs can look really similar. A lot of people fall into the trap of just describing sort of their day-to-day duties, and then there's very little for me to pick out from that of why you're a good professional. But if you're talking at the front of, okay, well, over the last 12 months, I led our team to, a RoSPA Gold Award. This is what we did. These are the initiatives. That straight away to me is, okay, this is someone that is engaged. This is someone who doesn't just turn up and do the bare minimum. This is someone who is completely engaged in the health and safety industry and is passionate about it. And I only want to put those sorts of people in front of my clients. I don't want to put a bum on a seat. I want to make sure the industry is better and I'm giving them the right sort of people. So yeah, I would make sure that it's all over the CV, it's all over your social media, and it's all over your company's social media. I mean, it's just such a great thing to use, and I think we could probably do more with it.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And there's been a lot of emphasis this morning on value as opposed to cost in health and safety and wellbeing terms. And I think that really does change how people and organisations think. From a RoSPA Awards perspective, what value does getting organisations to think about health and safety beyond the workplace add? When we start moving out into communities and thinking about the wider impact that organisations can have.
Absolutely, it's completely tied to companies' values and morals again, I think, and I can give you a really good example of where we probably got it wrong, if I'm honest, at HSE Recruitment. So we're very focused on health and safety. Obviously, we look after the safety of our guys at work. We're trying to extend that outwards, and we probably haven't done enough. So I do need to speak to RoSPA more about extending that out into their personal life and the communities. But we had a guy in my team recently who had an accident at home, and he's been off work for a number of months. He had a really, really bad accident at home, and straight away it was really obvious to us that we weren't doing enough. That's exactly the value of what RoSPA could have done for us as a partner. So yeah, I think if your values as a company are that you care about your people, that care doesn't stop the second that they leave the office. And if it does, then you don't really care about your people. You care about their work. You don't care about them. So if a company is investing into RoSPA Awards, they're saying, I care about you as an individual. I care. And that is, I think, a huge thing for the employees. That really makes you feel like you're part of something, and it makes people want to join you. It makes people not want to leave you. So yeah, absolutely. If it's a value for you, and you're not using this sort of stuff, is it really a value for you? Is kind of what I would say.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much indeed for that reflection and for also giving that organisational insight. I'm afraid we're drawing to the end of the session today. I'd just like to say that we will be sharing the copies of the slides from this morning with our delegate network, and also making the recording available for people who want to listen in or indeed share the content after the event closes. I really would like to end today's forum by thanking you all for attending, and a huge thank you for today's speakers. I've thoroughly enjoyed the session, and that can only enthuse people about our network. Congratulations to our awards ambassadors, and thank you for the fantastic work you're already doing and the work that's to come. Once again, a huge thank you to our forum sponsors, HSE Recruitment, and indeed yourself, Laura, for enabling these forums to take place. The RoSPA Awards Excellence Forum will be back in 2022, which is just in a few weeks' time. So please watch out for more information on these. We really hope you found today's forum useful, and we wish you every luck in your 2022 awards submission. So thank you so much.